So hey there. Thanks very much for checking out my videos here on YouTube. I do greatly appreciate it. This is a live session, so this is unscripted. There's no editing involved. It's all pretty basic from that standpoint. Basically, you're in my little studio space where I do a little 3D. I do a little bit of Canadian art, a few other little things along that line. Just kind of my little hobby space, and Turo is exactly my hobby space. So, kind of gives you a little idea there. I run one vehicle. It's a Mitsubishi Outlander on Turo. I'm currently in the process of waiting to get the 6-month inspection approved and relisted. So we talked about that on the last video, but I had some questions come up, and I thought to myself, that's probably so, some things to review or talk over again is insurance. And had a gentleman from the GTA basically messaged me and said, hey, they want to get started on Turo, and they've had some hurdles when it comes to finding insurance or a provider and what the process is and so forth. So I thought I would recap it because I did cover it in the earlier videos, but to be honest with you, I probably didn't do it as a solid, consistent one thought. Where it's kind of like, okay, well, here's my story and how it worked out. So essentially, I had hurdles to go through to get insurance coverage. And I made that clear on a bunch of other videos as well, where I kind of ranted a little bit. So if you've watched all the other videos in the past, you kind of go, okay, we already know this story and it is exactly how it plays out. But let's just go back over it in kind of one consistent thought. So I got the super genius lightning moment where I thought to myself, let's replace a car because I had a PT Cruiser. It was at the end of its life. It was getting to the point where it needed some work, and it's just time to let it go. And I wanted to go replace the car. And I thought, well, I would like to get into something uh, nice, not high end exotic or anything along that line. I started doing a little research on the old internet, and I came across a couple of folks down the states that were running Turo cars. So I thought, well, that's an interesting way of kind of offsetting two things because I already have a vehicle that I like and I drive, and it's one of my favorite cars. It's nothing fancy, and my little PT Cruiser was used for winter running around and, generally speaking, abusing. Like just if I needed to haul something in it, hatchback, throw it in there, like nice little minivan type deal, right? So that's going out the door, and I drive a little Jag, which I like during the summertime, and I will run a little bit in the winter as well. But it's not a primary car, and I guess it is. It's a daily driver, but it's not what I describe as a show car or anything like that line. It's just something I like, and I like to maintain it and keep it on the road as long as I could, right? Um, I've done a video on that one as well, and again, it's just a car that I like, and I've always kind of liked the looks of them. Now let's get back to talk about insurance. This is where I kind of go to the little rant a little bit, and we kind of go off a little run through. So I narrowed down the car that I wanted, which was an Outlander, and I wanted an Outlander GT, mainly because it's a V6, and it's a classic V6 in the sense that it's not doesn't have a pressurized fuel system. It's not direct injected, so you don't have to worry about carbon buildup. Most things on the engine are designed around the idea of a 10-year warranty for service, as at least on the design end of it. So labor rates and things along that line are very reasonable on it from that standpoint. And if you're going to run a vehicle for rental or for use, you want to be able to say to yourself, okay, can I get an alternator? Can I get a starter? And if I have to throw it into the car myself, I could do it, or it would be an hour or a couple hours worth of labor. So it wouldn't break the bank to get it done at a shop if you needed to, right? So and Mitsubishi products are kind of built around that 10-year program. So when you open the hood, you kind of go, oh well, it looks like a mechanic has laid this out in a way that you could service it and maintain it relatively easily. Some of the newer ones even use a timing chain, which means that you're really limited to what you really need to do underneath the hood. So that's why I went with that particular model. Plus, it's got a standard Old school style transmission, so it's very easy from that standpoint to service and maintain. It's not a CVT, so getting up past the 200K mark isn't going to be a big issue. So that's why I went with that particular model. Also, because it's a 7-passenger SUV, it moves itself into a bizarre category when it comes to insurance. It's not a desirable vehicle for theft, so the theft ratings are low on it, which is good. The other one is it's got a canopy built into it, so it's got a roll cage into the design. So it's got a 5-star safety rating on it. So again, it helps lower the insurance cost on it as well. A few other little things with it that kind of move it into a category that makes it palatable when you're in Southern Ontario to pay insurance on it. All right, so if you're out there shopping for your initial first vehicle for Turo, you do need to kind of think to yourself, what am I buying and what is my insurance going to be, the cost on this? So again, something to review. Usually I would say if you've got a good broker, a couple of phone calls can help you out from that standpoint. Or if you're on a bank system where you're using like a CIBC or Scotiabank, they have an automated quoting system, so at least you can get kind of a general idea. You can kind of go, oh, well, that car's a little more money than this one to insure. That car's a little more money to insure from that standpoint. It's a good idea to review that before you start, really going out looking at cars. So that's the first step from that standpoint, is find that category and find that vehicle within that category that's going to kind of meet that fleet or that insurance cost you're trying to hit. Now, with Economical, which is the insurance company that I deal with, and the reason I do that is Turo, their commercial policy is through Economical. So your personal policy should be through Economical. It's not written in stone, they don't require it. But the reason why I would suggest that is if there was an accident or there was an issue about coverage or what overlapped, well, you kind of have that reassuring moment of going, well, guys, you are the insurance company. So either the commercial policy pays or the private policy pays. But again, because they're the same company and they wrote the policies, there really shouldn't be any real unusual hurdles, and you shouldn't be the first person having to process a claim through them, right? So that's why I went with Economical and on the personal end, and why I also went with it when you're looking at Turo, because that's what they use. So Economical is kind of the route to look for. Where you buy your insurance is really important. You have to find an independent broker. If you're going to go through, and I went through Scotiabank, I checked with TD, I also checked with a couple other, I was with a brokerage firm before. They can't really process or comprehend how a Turo program works, like how a peer-to-peer. And usually the person that's talking to you is either an automated bot, and it's not going to be able to really process it or go any further, or you're going to be talking to an inexperienced insurance broker, which is going to be like pulling teeth, because none of them seem to feel familiar with Turo. So it becomes a real struggling point in Southern Ontario as far as that's concerned. So it means you have to go to a broker. You have to go to a little independent, someone who's got a little shop someplace, like a mom and pop place would be perfect. Someone that's been in the business for quite a few years would be ideal. That's what I found after dealing with my broker. And I was with my broker for 10 years, and I had to switch out to an independent, mainly because they couldn't service me. They were really nightmarish about it from that standpoint. So get out of the call center style broker, leave them completely, go to an independent, and shop around on your own too. In other words, I'm not telling you to go, hey, go check out this one or that one. I'm not giving you a name. You have to go through get the old phone book out or Google it and find 3 or 4 independents and start working quotes and explain to them, ask them right out of the gate, are you familiar with Turo? Now, if you're in the GTA or if you're in Ottawa, it should be pretty straightforward. I'm in more of a rural area, so my broker had no idea what it was, but at least they were very, very, very happy to pick up the phone and call Economical and figure out how the process works and go from there. Now, the way Economical or the way Turo pitches the idea is that if you're going to rent your car out and you're going to rent it out 50% of the time, well, then Economical is going to give you a discount to offset the fact that you're not driving your vehicle, that they have the coverage on their commercial end of it. Um, I don't find that's I didn't find that to be very effective at all. To be honest with you, I was chasing tail on that one all day long, trying to say, okay, well, if it's a $1,200, um, well, let's use a number, $1,000 to insure a car for the year, and that's not what I'm saying it is. I'm just saying for for ease of math, it's $1,000, right? And you go, okay, well, I've got the vehicle out 15 days out of the month, so that means my insurance should be $500 for that coverage, right, for the year, right? From that standpoint, doesn't really work out that way, and Economical uh, kind of ignores that kind of request. So you have to kind of say to yourself, okay, I'm going to be paying insurance on this car as if I were a driver for the period of the time. And if I get a discount or I get a credit back or something from Economical, that's a bonus, right? And the way I looked at it, because I went with a cash car, my insurance, because of my age and my driving experience and so forth, is fairly reasonable, anyways. If I were a 16-year-old, I probably couldn't do Turo. It wouldn't work, right? So if I had a bunch of accidents and issues and my insurance was through the roof, probably wouldn't be able to do Turo. That wouldn't work out as far as that's concerned. I'm in a position where I'm in an area where the insurance is not crazy or outlandish. I'm in a category because I'm a little older, gray hair, old man rant. I get a little bit of a deal, right? So it's one of those things where it worked out for me not to have to chase it down so much. But with that said, I do get a little discount on the Turo vehicle that I have. So in other words, I run my Jag as my primary, and my Outlander is out on Turo, and it's out typically between, I'd say, 10 to 20 days out of the month, right? So I think I'm paying, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. It's about $100 a month for personal coverage on that particular vehicle. And the way I looked at it from this standpoint is, yes, I could probably fight with them and you know, rattle shave and make lots of noise and say, hey, no, it should be 50%, it should be much less. But at the same time, my broker needs to make some money, right? So they make 20 to 30%, I think, on the deal. So we're not talking a huge amount of cash. So really, that's not really an incentive for them to dig through it. The other one is that if I'm just starting out, I don't have to pay for office space, right? I'm not paying for a garage. I'm not paying for a utility or a hydro bill attached to it. My bookkeeping and accounting is fairly affordable. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have a lot of the usual business expenses, so to have to say, hey, I've got to spend a little more on insurance. You weigh it. You kind of go, okay. If I were running a commercial policy, I've run commercial policies before. I would be into a 2 or 3 bay garage. I'd be in a commercial space. I'd have a small office, so we have additional expenses with that are exponential. I'd be in a commercial rate for hydro and electric, and I'd have to have a proper accountant, proper bookkeeping. I have to have a system in place, whole host of stuff. Like, expenses go right through the roof. So if you're running a one car item through Turo, you're going to pay a little more on insurance. Just be aware of that, right? So I factor that in and say, okay, well, that's 2 or 3 days out of the month that goes to paying insurance if it gets rented out through Turo. So that's the process. Now, when I shopped around, a couple of things that I found. If you're going to go to a bank, they don't want to work with Turo. They're going to make that really clear. They're going to say, no, we don't allow you to do peer-to-peer. So again, struggling point, right? So, and if you have an issue and you say, okay, well, I'll just run my policy on my own and I'll let Turo run their policy and I'll just kind of put the blinders on and let things slide. Well, if there was a major accident and there was a fatality or major property damage, um, there might be an issue there where what Turo covers and what your policy covers, and there's a gray area where there's a spot that's missed. Now you're into litigations and you're into a whole host of nightmare moments where you kind of go, if I could travel back in time, I would probably go and get an economical policy, because the cost, when I did the price point, when I did the numbers on it, yes, Scotiabank was a little bit cheaper, and it came with a few more little added bonuses that I thought were kind of nice. TD was almost like dead on the money, anyways. So it was one of those things where why would I bother? Um, the broker that I was with um, initially um, was a little cheaper, but then as time kind of progressed, when I came up to renewal, they bumped the rate up almost 30%, 40%, and that's where I said, you know what, I'm going to go to an independent. So that's my thought as far as insurance is concerned. When you're looking at Turo vehicles, you want to go with economical, and you want to find an independent broker, and you want to be very honest and very clear with them and say, hey, this is the intent. Okay, and economical does have a program set up for it. The broker is probably going to have to call them or get a hold of the rep in that area and confirm. And you're going to want to get it confirmed either through an email or a letter saying, hey, yeah, you're absolutely right. Economical is the insurance provider for Turo. Um, your policy is through economical on your driving end of it, and everything blends nice and easy, and it makes it simple. So that's the process there, and expect to pay. They're going to tell you get a deal. It's more of a shell game where they kind of say, well, it's marked up this more, much more, and then really it's a retail price. It is what it is from that standpoint. Now, if you wanted to go to a commercial policy, because we had a discussion about that earlier, um, I at one point was on a commercial policy because I had a little garage and did a little used car lot, and I'm going to tell you that there's only two or three companies in Canada that will really deal with you as a small independent, and they become relatively difficult to deal with because they're going to want to see some experience. So if you're giving them a cold call out of the blue and say, hey, you know what, I'm thinking of picking up 5 cars for Turo, and they're going to look at you and probably say, we'll pass, and they don't have to insure you. Or they'll give you an outlandish number that is basically enough to say, go away, right? It's not worth that at that point. You'd be better off running a couple cars on Turo for a year, not only to get familiar with how Turo works and how the system moves and how the process is for checking in a car, checking out a car, how much work is actually involved when you're processing a client, timelines for payments, what is the process for claims for door ding, scratches, nicks, and marks, because you're going to want to get that experience in place as well. You may look at it from that standpoint and go, oh, no, I just want to go ahead and put 10 cars out. That's great, but you're going to get inundated with some pretty, what I'd call annoying paperwork. So start off with one or two and just get familiar with it. Don't go too crazy. I'd say buy a cash car, something under 10 grand. Get something that's easy to service, easy to maintain, not crazy on insurance, nothing that's going to cause you any undue stress for the couple. Get something that's cookie cutter and easy and that you're familiar with. So if like I'm familiar with Mitsubishi and Hyundai's, I'm also pretty familiar with General Motors product too. So those are the vehicles that I would kind of keep in my wheelhouse. But if you're the type of guy who goes, no, my background is European cars and I'm familiar with BMWs, and maybe you know the breaking points for those, you know how to kind of work around that, or you know to get to that particular issue beforehand, right? So in other words, work with something that you're comfortable with, and also pick up a car that you can say to yourself that if it gets a ding, if it gets a mark, if it gets a scratch and it doesn't get claimed back, then you can kind of go, it's a car. Now, if you're going to put your car that you've put time and energy into, and you're a passionate enthusiast, and you're going to say, I want to share this experience, be prepared to go, oh, geez, well, yeah, someone had their dog in it. Someone had a smoke. Someone squealed the tires out, especially if it's a high performance car. Someone's been riding the brakes, things along that line. So get yourself something that's kind of, you can kind of go, okay, it's just a car. Nothing to kind of get you all worked up about. And get something that's going to work in the insurance program comfortably, so you're not paying a fortune for it initially out of the gate. Now, if you run for the 6 months, much like myself, where I go, okay, I've run my Outlander for 6 months. I'm looking at my rental return now. I'm going, okay, well, I'm not at the bottom end of the market. I have a nice vehicle, leather roof, you know, it's got some twice attached to it. It's got a little bit of a curb appeal to it. It's not your basic little SUV. So I'm in that middle market range, maybe just a little bit below middle, you know, just kind of that right at the cusp of almost a minivan type thing. I'm looking at it from this standpoint, going, well, if I'm getting between, and this is just a raw number, $40 and $60 on a daily, and I look at a Discovery, or I look at an LR4, or some of the larger Land Rovers, or even I've been looking at some of the Jags, their little SUV. Um, they move up past that $100 mark on a daily, and their cost um, is not that far off from what I paid for my Outlander, as far as that's concerned. But the dilemma is that if I get into a Land Rover, I might be able to get 130 or $100 a day on rental, and that's for an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old unit. Kind of reasonable condition, nicely equipped. I'm probably going to be around that 12 to 16 range on it. So we're going a little bit above that 10 grand mark. But then we look at it from the standpoint of how much more am I going to be making? Well, I'm almost double on a daily rental. So it makes sense from that standpoint. But now you've got to look at it from the standpoint of what does that brand represent? So if I get into a Land Rover with 160,000 kilometers, well, let's do for major service, right? And Land Rover parts are not particularly cheap. They're not outlandish, like they're not on par with some of the other vehicles out there, but they're not an economy-based vehicle. Tires are going to be a little more money, brakes are a little more money, oil change is a little more money. So you have to kind of make that kind of a judgment call from that standpoint. Whereas when I look at my Outlander, I can get jobber parts all day long on it. It's a standard tire size. It's a standard oil change. There's nothing unusual or exotic about it. If I had to replace a bumper cover, they're fairly inexpensive. Whereas I get into a Land Rover, I'm going to have lane mitigation software to update. I'm going to have sensors to replace. I've got HUD lighting. I've got ballasts, like a whole host of things in that front end that might have to get replaced in the event of an accident. It's going to make that insurance rate a little higher. It's going to make repairs a hurdle. So it's one of those things where you have to kind of say to yourself, where do I want to be? And doing 6 months with my Outlander, or I might keep doing it for the next year, which in all likelihood that'll be the case. I'll wait for the right deal to come up on a vehicle to replace it or to add to it. Um, but it's one of those things where that first vehicle is really key to keep you in Turo, to see that you see a little bit of an income coming back, even if it's on the lower end side, to say, hey, at least I've covered the insurance cost, covered the rate of depreciation on the vehicle. Maybe I've covered some of the service costs or some of the upgrades I put onto it. And that's in the first 6 months. That's kind of what I'm shooting for. And then from that standpoint, we're going to go and say, okay, well, let's buy that car down. So because I had to put money out, let's get it down to zero. So I got to see $9,000 or $11,000 back on that particular thing as kind of an investment, right? So again, that's all stuff that you'd want to review and kind of put a little note, pros and cons of each car. So again, I kind of went around and about and kind of rattled to say, hey, you're pretty much stuck with Economical. So that's the company you're going to pretty much have to deal with. You're going to need to find an independent broker. Don't use a brokerage where they have a call center or where they just kind of farm you out. You want to be attached to a broker, to a individual, so you have someone to call, say, hey, hopefully you never have to talk to them. Hopefully it's just a negotiation when it comes to dollars and cents, but you want to have that direct connection to an actual physical person or a physical office where you can actually go open the door and talk to them, right? If you're running a standard vehicle and you said, okay, well, I'm not using Turo, I would probably say, yeah, use a call center, use the lowest common denominator, get yourself the cheapest price, because you're not really concerned about the overall experience per se or the service end of it. You just want a pink slip at the cheapest possible rate you can go. Then I would probably say check out Scotiabank or go to TD or someplace that would give you a sizable reason to be there as far as that's concerned. Independent brokers, I've dealt with them in the past because, again, I've had commercial policies. You have to deal with them too. And the nice thing, if you're dealing with an independent broker, they can package the deal in a year or two and say, look, they might go to Wananisa, which is another provider in Canada that deals with commercial policies. And they might go, well, look, Keith here has been doing Turo now for 2 years. It's been through Economical. This is the RIN number, and this is the policy he's been writing under through Economical. We haven't had any issues with him. He hasn't had to make any claims. There hasn't been any real headaches involved. He just needs to get a commercial policy because his business has now grown past the the 4 vehicle cap that seems to be on Economical's policy. There's ways around it, but they do cap it at that. Um, at that point, they may look and go, okay, he's had 2 years experience. They may take a gamble with you, and they may say, okay, well, yeah, let's do it with a 5,000 or a $10,000 deductible. Let's do this, let's do that to try and make it work. With the caveat that down the road you're going to get off Turo and you're going to work your own book, which means you're going to get your own little office, or you're going to go get your wholesaler license, or you're going to go get a license through OMBIC to be able to process and move cars, right? So it's one of those things where Turo is kind of a stepping stone to say, hey, I'm going to put my foot in just a little bit. I'm going to do the economy low end, not low end car, but I'm going to do a budget minded business where, I'm not going to put too much money out, not a lot of overhead to eat into what you'd make. Keep in mind that Turo does take a percentage of your business, so that's there. But at this point, you've probably already figured that one out. But yeah, independent brokers where you have to go. The other one is keeping vehicles off site can also reduce some of your rates as well. I keep my vehicle in a storage unit when it's not being used. I get a break on insurance for that reason. So it's a secured area, cameras, lighting, everything along that line. Plus, it ensures that essentially I'm not really using that vehicle for personal use because it's usually over there. And I've got to physically go drive my other car, which would normally be in storage, which it is, in the winter in there. So I just keep that area all year round. I'm in the neck of getting a storage outside is like 40, $50 per month. So really it's a drop in the bucket compared to a commercial venture. So that's where I would probably suggest. If you're in the GTA, you might look at it and kind of go, it's cheaper if I have a secured area. Or if you're, let's say, out on that outer edge, and you go, oh, geez, well, I'm in Pickering now. Maybe it's cheaper to go get a storage space in Ajax. Maybe the rates are cheaper. And that's something where if you sat down with a broker and explain the situation, they may be able to go, hey, you know what? Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Go that route. But really for the marginal savings, it might not be worth it to you. Like for me, I did it because it's sheer convenience. I like the idea of having it offsite. It's just the way I've set it up. But it's a personal thing where you want to kind of review that. So insurance, location, you're going to pretty much get, let's face it, insurance is always going to cost you money. So doing it through this way, through Economical, is probably going to be the easiest and less headaches to have to deal with. If you find a cheaper provider, I'd love to hear information on it. If you are a Turo guy out there and you're saying, hey, Keith, you know what? Went through the same hurdle, exact same process you're going through. I ended up going through X company and they seem to work really well. I would appreciate it as far as that's concerned. If you are an insurance broker out there and you go, hey, I've got 10 clients or I've got 15 clients that work through Turo and it's been great. We've been running it now for 3 or 4 years. Not only does it help your insurance broker, it's because the broker can kind of say, well, look, now not only do I have one car on file, I've managed to get a client to have 4 cars. So it means they're making more money, right? So they kind of like that. And it limits their level of risk because you can only drive 1 car at a time anyways, right? So it's kind of a win-win for everybody from that standpoint. But yeah, finding an independent broker that'll work with you is key. And again, if you do know anybody, leave it in the chat section. That would be great. Again, hopefully this helps you out. I try and keep these things about 30 minutes. It's a live thing, so again, no editing. I do kind of meander a little bit as well. Hopefully, it's divided into chapters for you if you're replaying it. You kind of go from that standpoint. I might get a little bit deeper into this, or I might do a couple little in-car, 2-minute, 3-minute little snippets to say, hey, this is who you call, this is where you go. So hopefully that helps you out a little bit. Again, thank you very much for checking out the videos. I do appreciate it. Again, check out Economical. Find an independent broker. You're going to pay a little bit more. Whatever they say on the actual site isn't particularly accurate, just so you're aware of it. You're probably not going to get to that point where you're not paying any personal insurance. You're not going to be at zero. You're going to pay something. Again, if you're running it for that 5 or 10 days of doing cleanup and stuff like that, you may want to just trim that policy right down to the bare minimum. And that's something where you want to sit with the broker and say, okay, well, level of risk. You would be responsible in the event of an accident to replace the car or do the repairs yourself or have an incredibly high deductible. But again, that might be something you need to do to tailor those expenses to work within that package. And hopefully, knock on wood, you don't have to deal with it. And you kind of go, nope, Turo's booked 30 days out of the month and you only get to wash it once a day and it's a regular rental and it's, you're out a contract for 6 months, which would be like the nicest thing to find, right? Where you go, okay, it's just some new Canadian who can't get approved for a loan, has a surplus amount of cash, not an issue. I just want something nice to drive and something that's going to tide him over for the 6 months while he can get established. And I've had that already, which is kind of nice. So it's one of those things where that becomes a real simple thing with Turo. It's kind of like they do discount the living daylights out of it. So you're looking and kind of go, okay, it's almost like by the time it's all said and done, the discount on the last one I did was almost 70%. So the overall number, you kind of go, ugh. You say, wow, that hurt. But when you think about it, you go, okay, well, no, you made $500 for the month, or you made $600 for the month, and there's no real work involved. It's not bad on an entry level or a midpoint car as far as that's concerned. But again, something to think about. Okay, so again, we're over that 30-minute mark. Thank you very much for checking out the video. Again, unscripted, so I do apologize. At some point, I will be doing podcasts, and podcasts will be done up in little chapters. I'll probably do them in a series of 12, and then you can kind of pick and choose and listen to the chapter you need to kind of fill what category you're kind of searching for, right? And I've got the first two kind of in the can. I'll probably end up doing them once or twice a month type deal, kind of take the content from what I'm doing with these little chats and kind of saying, okay, I like that. Let's move that over to the podcast. I like that. Let's move that over to the podcast and go from there. Okay. So thank you very much. Have a pleasant and enjoyable day. And we'll see you later. There we go. And see ya. End.